Chapter 3. The Bhagavan was certain of his household disciples. God is formless and with form. One day in winter, a certain householder disciple who was a college professor came to see the Bhagavan. Sri Ramakrishna was seated on the southern veranda of his room, and he was smiling. After a short conversation, he asked, "Do you prefer to meditate on God with form or without form?" The disciple hesitated and answered, "I prefer to meditate upon God as the formless being rather than as a being with form." The Bhagavan replied, "That is good. There is no harm in looking at him from this or the other point of view. Yes, to think of him as the formless being is quite right. But do not go away with the idea that that alone is true and that all else is false. Meditating upon him as a being with form is equally right. You, however, must hold on to your particular conception of God until you have realized and seen God." Image worship. Bhagavan, one may believe that God is with form, but surely he is not in the earthen images that are worshipped. My dear sir, why do you say earthen images? The image of the divine being is made of the spirit. The disciple could not understand the meaning of this, but answered, "Yes, should it not be one's duty to make clear to those who worship images that God is not the same as the images, and that at the time of worship they should think of God himself and not of the image made of clay? The Lord of the universe teaches mankind. He who has made the sun and the moon, man and brutes, he who has created things for them to live upon, parents to tend and rear them, he who has done so many things will surely do something to bring them to the light. The Lord dwells in the temple of the human body. He knows our innermost thoughts. If there is anything wrong in image worship, does he not know that all worship is meant for him? He will be pleased to accept it, knowing that it is for him. Why should you worry yourself about things which are beyond your reach? Try to realize God and love him. This is your first duty. You speak of images made of clay. Well, there often comes a necessity for worshipping such images and symbols. In Vedanta, it is said, "The absolute existence, intelligence, bliss, pervades the universe and manifests itself through all forms." What harm is done by worshipping the Absolute through images and symbols? We see little girls with their dolls. How long do they play with them? So long as they are not married. After marriage, they put away those dolls. Similarly, one needs images and symbols so long as God is not realized in his true form. It is God himself who has provided these various forms of worship. The Master of the universe has done all this to suit different men in different stages of spiritual growth and knowledge. The mother so arranges the food for her children that each one gets what is best for him. Suppose a mother has 5 children with one fish to cook for all. She will make different dishes of it that she may give to each just what suits him. The rich palau for one, soup for another, fried fish for a third, fish with sour tamarind for a fourth, and so on, exactly according to the power of digestion of each. Do you now understand? Yes, Bhagavan, now I do, but, Revered Sir, how can one fix one's mind on God? How to fix one's mind on God? To that end, one must always sing forth the holy name of God and talk without ceasing of his glory and attributes. Then one must seek the company of holy men. One must from time to time visit the Lord's devotees or those who have given up attachment to the things of the world for the sake of the Lord. It is, however, difficult to fix one's mind upon God in the midst of worldly cares and anxieties. Hence the necessity of going into solitude now and again with a view to meditating on him. Solitude is necessary. In the first stage of one's spiritual life, one cannot do without solitude. When plants are young, they stand in need of fences around them for their protection. Otherwise, goats and cattle will destroy them. The depth of the heart, the retired corner, and the forest are the three places for meditation. One should also practice discrimination. One should discriminate between the real and the unreal, between matter and spirit. It is thus that one will shake off one's love for the things of the world and attachment to sensual pleasures, wealth, fame, power. Avadhuta and a kite. Turning to Bejoy, who had come in, the Bhagavan continued, Shivanath, the leader of the Brahmo Samaj, has great cares. He has to edit a newspaper and do various other works in attending to worldly affairs. One naturally loses peace of mind and is overwhelmed with worries and anxieties. It is said in the Bhagavat that Avadhuta made 24 gurus. The kite was one of them. In a certain place, some fishermen were catching fish. A kite swooped down and snatched a fish. Seeing the kite with the fish in its claws, hundreds of crows flew after him and began to caw, making a great noise. In whatever direction the kite flew, the crows followed. When he flew to the south, they pursued him. When he flew to the north, they were after him, and he found no peace in any direction. At last the kite dropped the fish. Then the crows flew after the fish, and the kite rested calmly on the branch of a high tree. He thought within himself, that fish was the cause of all this trouble. Now that I no longer have it, I am happy and in perfect peace. The Avadhuta learned from this kite that as long as a man is attached to worldly objects, so long he has toils, cares, anxiety, unrest, and unhappiness. When attachment is gone, all works end, and then comes peace. But work without attachment is good. It does not bring unrest. Avadhuta and a bee. It is very difficult, however, to work and remain unattached. A few only can accomplish it. Those who have attained the God consciousness, like the sage Narada, work for the good of humanity. Avadhuta made another guru, a bee. What trouble a bee takes to collect honey! But it is not for its own use. Someone else comes and takes the honey from the comb. The Avadhuta learned from the bee that it is not wise to collect anything. Truly, spiritual men should depend absolutely upon God and should not desire to possess anything. But this is not possible for householders. They will have to support their families, and therefore they should gather and possess. A fowl does not gather into barns, but when it has a number of young ones, then it brings food for them in its bill. Practice of non-attachment. Perform all your duties with your mind always fixed on God. As for your parents, wife, and children, serve them as your own, but always remember they do not belong to you, that they are the children of God. You are also a child of God, and your own people are those who love God. The tortoise moves about in the water in quest of food. Where do you think her mind is? On the water's edge where her eggs are laid. In the same manner you may go about in the world, but take good care that your mind always rest upon the hallowed feet of the Lord. Suppose you have not acquired true love for the Lord. If in this state you enter the world, then you will surely get entangled. Misfortune, grief, misery, sorrow, suffering, and the various diseases of the body will disturb the balance of your mind. And the more you will throw yourself into the affairs of the world and trouble yourself about worldly matters, the more your attachment to the world will be increased. Rub your hand with oil if you desire to break open the jackfruit, else the milky exudation of the fruit will stick to your hands. First, rub your soul with the oil of love and devotion to the Lord. Then you may come in contact with the affairs of the world. Need of solitude. But to this end, solitude is the one thing needful. If you want butter, you must curdle the milk and set it in a place where no one can disturb it. Otherwise the curd will not stand. Then churn it and the butter will rise. Similarly, the neophyte should sit in solitude and not be disturbed by worldly-minded people. Then, through the churning of the settled mind by the practice of meditation, the butter of divine love will be acquired. If you give your mind to God in solitude, you will obtain the spirit of true renunciation and absolute devotion. If you give the same mind to the world, it will grow worldly and think of woman and gold. The world may be likened to water and the mind to milk. Pure milk, once mixed with water, cannot be separated from it. But if it is first turned into butter and then placed in water, it can remain separate. Let the milk of your mind be turned into the butter of divine love by means of religious practices in solitude. Then the mind will never get mixed with the water of worldliness, but will rise above and remain unattached to the world. Having attained true knowledge and devotion, the mind will stand apart from the world. Lust and gold, unreal. Along with this, practice discrimination. Lust and gold are unreal. God is the one reality. What uses has money? It can give one food, clothes, house, the luxuries and comforts of life, but it cannot bring spiritual perfection or God vision. Therefore, the acquisition of wealth should not be the highest end and aim of life. In this manner, you should discriminate. Similarly, by discrimination, you will overcome your attachment to personal beauty. Think what the body of a beautiful woman is made of. Like all bodies, it is of flesh and blood, skin and bones, fat and marrow, etc. The wonder is that man loses sight of God and gives his mind purely to such transitory objects of sense. Means of God vision. Bhagavan, is it possible to see God? Certainly. The following are some of the means of seeing God. Going from time to time into solitude, singing forth His name and His attributes, discrimination. Bhagavan, what state of mind leads to God vision? Cry to God with a yearning heart, and then you will see Him. People will shed a jug full of tears for the sake of their wife or children. They will be carried away by a stream of their own tears for the sake of money. But who sheds a tear for God? Cry for Him, not for show, but with a longing and yearning heart. The rosy light of the dawn comes before the rising sun. Likewise, a longing and yearning heart is the sign of God vision that comes after. Extreme longing is the surest way to God vision. Through extreme longing, the mind remains fixed on the Supreme Being. One should have faith, like that of an innocent child, and such longing as a child has when it wants to see its mother. There was a boy named Jatila. He used to go to school alone through the woods. Often he felt lonely and afraid. He told his mother about it, and she said, "Why art thou fearful, my child? Thou must call Krishna whenever thou art frightened." "Who is Krishna, mother?" the boy asked. The mother answered, "Krishna is thy brother." The power of faith and true longing. After that, when Jatila was passing through the woods alone and felt frightened, he called aloud, "Brother Krishna!" When no one came, he cried again, "O brother Krishna, where art thou? Come to me and protect me, I am frightened." Hearing the call of this faithful child, Krishna could no longer remain away. He appeared in the form of a young boy and said, "Here I am, thy brother. Why art thou frightened? Come with me, I will take thee to school." Then, having escorted him to school, Lord Krishna said to him, "I will come to thee whenever thou callest me. Do not be afraid." Such is the power of true faith and true longing. You can see God if your love for Him is as strong as the strength of these three attachments. How to love put together, namely the attachment of God, of a miser to his wealth, that of a mother to her newborn child, and that of a chaste wife to her husband. To see God, one must love Him with the whole heart and soul. One must make one's prayers reach the Divine Mother. absolute self-resignation to the will of the Divine Mother is the surest way to God vision. As the kitten resigns itself to the will of its mother, so a devotee shall resign himself to the will of the Divine Mother. The kitten knows nothing more than to cry, meow, meow. The mother cat may keep her young one on the bare floor of the kitchen or on the downy bed of the householder. The kitten is always contented. Similarly, the true devotee should always cry unto the Divine Mother and be contented with whatever she wishes to do with him. Fetters of the soul. God consciousness does not come so long as there are three things in the heart: shame, hatred, and fear. These three and caste pride are the fetters of the soul. When these fetters are broken, freedom is attained. Bound by fetters is Jiva, the ego. Free from fetters is Shiva, God. Every man has certain debts to pay: a debt to the Divine Spirit, a debt to the sages, debt to mother, to father, to the wife. No man can renounce everything without paying off these debts. But if his soul be intoxicated with divine love and become mad after God, then he is free from all duties and debts. Then who is his father? Who is his mother? And who is his wife? Madness of divine love. He behaves like a madman who is free from all bondage and who has no duty to perform. Do you know what that madness of divine love is? In that state one forgets the world and becomes unconscious of one's own body, which is so dear to one. Chaitanya Deva possessed this madness of ecstasy. He had neither hunger, nor thirst, nor sleep, nor consciousness of his physical form. The meaning of the word Chaitanya is indivisible and absolute intelligence. Vaisnava Charan used to say that Chaitanya Deva, the incarnation of divine love, was like a bubble on the ocean of that absolute intelligence. Divine love and ecstasy. Divine love is the rarest thing in the world. He who can love God as a devoted wife loves her husband attains to divine love. Pure love is difficult to acquire. In pure love, the whole heart and soul must be absorbed in God. Then will come ecstasy. In ecstasy, a man remains dumb with wonder. Outward breathing stops entirely, but inward breathing continues. As when aiming a gun, a man remains speechless and without breathing. In divine love, one entirely forgets the external world with all its charms and attractions. Even one's own body, which is so dear to one, is easily forgotten. In ecstasy, when the breathing stops, the whole mind remains absolutely fixed upon the Supreme. All nerve currents run upward with tremendous force, and the result is Samadhi or God consciousness. Those who are mere scholars, Pandits, and have not attained divine love confound the minds of others. Pride. Some people are proud of their wealth, their fame, and social position, but these things are transitory. None can take them away after death. It is not good to be proud of wealth. You may say, I am wealthy, but then there are millionaires, multimillionaires, and so on. In the evening, fireflies think that they are lighting the world, but when the stars begin to shine, their pride is subdued. The stars in turn think that they are lighting the world, but when the moon shines, the stars are put to shame. The moon, too, believes that her light illumines everything, but lo, the dawn appears and the rising sun effaces the light of the moon. If wealthy people thought of these things, they would no longer be proud of their wealth. Revered Sir, we are householders. Please give us some further instructions. First, know God, then perform the duties of a householder. The world is unreal. Revered Sir, is this world unreal? So long as a man does not realize God, so long it is real. Because at that time he makes mistakes and through self-delusion says, me and mine. Being fettered by this self-delusion, he drowns in the sea of lust and worldliness, and becomes so blinded by ignorance that he cannot see the way out. You yourself can notice how transitory the world is. Look at this house. How many people have come and gone? How many people have been born and have died in it? Now it exists, now it does not. It is ephemeral. Those whom you call your own will vanish when your eyes are closed. If you have no one in the household, still you are bound and cannot go anywhere because of some distant relative. The way is open, but the fish cannot escape from the net. The silkworm makes its own cocoon, but does not know how to get out and consequently dies in it. How a householder should live in the world. A householder should take care of his children, but at the same time he should think of them as baby Krishna, or as children of God. Serve your father as God, and your mother as Divine Mother. After realizing God, if a man lives with his wife, he has no physical relation with her. Both live like bhaktas, or true devotees. They talk of spiritual subjects and spend their time in thinking of God and in caring for his bhaktas. They serve God who dwells in all beings. But, revered sir, we do not find any such husbands and wives. Yes, there are some, but they are very rare. Worldly people do not easily recognize them. But in order to live like this, both must be spiritual. If both enjoy divine love, then such a life is possible. Otherwise there will be no harmony, but discord and trouble between husband and wife. Perhaps the wife will complain, saying, "Why did I marry this man? What pleasure does he give me? He simply sits quietly and thinks of God. He is losing his mind." These are some of the obstacles, but there may be others. The children may be disobedient or may be diseased. Then, Reverend Sir, what is to be done? It is very difficult for a householder to practice devotion. There are many obstacles. You all know them very well. Disease, sorrow, poverty, disharmony with the wife, disobedience and evil tendencies in the children. But there is a way out of it. One should occasionally live in solitude and pray and struggle hard to attain to God. Revered sir, is it necessary to leave one's home? Not for good, but occasionally when you find opportunity for a day or two, leaving behind responsibility, care, and anxiety. But during this time you should not mix with worldly people or think of worldly affairs. Either live alone or in the company of some saint or holy man. How to recognize a saint? Revered sir, how can we know or recognize a saint? He is a saint whose heart, soul, and inner nature have turned towards God. He who has renounced woman and wealth. A saint does not look at women with the eye of desire. If he comes near a woman, he sees the Divine Mother in her and worships her. His thoughts are always on God and his words are of him. He sees God everywhere and knows that by serving others, he serves him. These are some of the outward signs of a saint. Revered sir, is it necessary to remain long in solitude? Until right discrimination is acquired. Revered sir, what is right discrimination? God is truth. The world is untruth. This is discrimination. Truth means that which is unchangeable and permanent, and untruth is that which is changeable and transitory. He who has right discrimination knows that God alone is the reality. All other things are unreal. When right discrimination comes, then rises intense desire to know God. As long as one loves untruth, such as the pleasures and comforts of the body, fame, honor, and wealth, so long one does not desire to know God, the truth. Right discrimination between truth and untruth leads one to search after God. Ecstasy. Bhagavan, we have heard that thou hast attained ecstasy and God consciousness. Wilt thou please explain when and how such a state comes? Ecstasy does not come to one who has not realized God. When a fish rises from deep water, it disturbs the surface of the water, and the larger the fish, the greater the disturbance. Therefore, a person in the state of ecstasy sometimes laughs, sometimes weeps, sometimes sings, sometimes dances, but one cannot remain in that state of ecstasy for a long time. Work necessary for God vision. Bhagavan, we have heard that thou hast seen God. If this be true, please make us see him also. Everything depends upon the will of the Lord. What can man do? One may repeat his holy name, but sometimes tears flow and sometimes not. At the time of meditation, one day you may have perfect concentration, and another day not be able to fix your mind at all. Work is necessary for God vision. Once I was passing by a pool, the surface of which was covered by thick scum. I saw a poor man pushing the scum to one side to look at the water. This showed me that if you wish to see the water, you must push aside the scum. That act of pushing is like the work which removes all the impurities of the heart. Then God is visible. Concentration, meditation, repetition of the name of the Lord, charitable works, self-sacrifice, these works will remove the scum of ignorance which covers the water of divinity in the pool of the heart. Mahima, who had joined the group of devotees, exclaimed, "Oh yes, Bhagavan, such works are absolutely necessary. Tireless labor is needed to attain great results. How much must we study? Innumerable are the sciences, scriptures, and philosophies. How much can you study? What results can you get by mere discrimination? First, try to realize God. Have faith in the words of your guru, and perform some good work. If you have not found a guru, a true spiritual master, earnestly pray to God. He will show you what he is like. What can you know by reading books? Before you enter a marketplace, you can hear only a loud, confused uproar. But when you go near, all confusion will vanish, and you will distinguish what each one is calling. Before you reach the shore, you hear the roar of waves. But when you come near, you see vessels, seagulls, birds, and you can count the waves. Book knowledge and realization. One cannot realize divinity by reading books. There is a vast difference between book knowledge and realization. After realization, all books, sciences, and scriptures seem to him like worthless straw. It is necessary first to make acquaintance with the landlord. Why are you so anxious to know beforehand how many houses, how many gardens, how many stocks and bonds he possesses? If you ask the servants, they will not tell you, nor will they notice you. But if you can once become acquainted with the landlord, by whatever means, you will learn about his possessions in a moment, and the servants then will bow down to you and honor you. Bhagavan, how can one make acquaintance with the landlord? For that I say work is necessary. What is the use of sitting quietly and saying God exists? If you merely sit on the shore of a lake and say, "There are fish in this lake," will you catch any? Go and get the things necessary for fishing. Get a rod and line and bait and throw some lure in the water. Then from the deep water the fish will rise and come near, and you will be able to see and catch them. You wish me to show you God while you sit quietly by without making the least effort. How unreasonable. You would have me set the curds, churn the butter, and hold it before your mouths. You ask me to catch the fish and place it in your hands. How unreasonable. If a man desires to see the king in his palace, he will have to go to the palace and pass through all the gates. But if after entering the outermost gate he exclaims, "Where is the king?" he will not find him. He must go on through the 7 gates. Then he will see the king. Work and grace. Bhagavan, by what kind of work can God be attained? There is no difference in work. Do not think that this work will lead to God and that will not. Everything depends upon His grace. Whatever work you perform with sincerity and earnest longing will attract His grace and help towards realization. Through His grace, the conditions for realization will become perfect. These conditions are association with the holy, right discrimination of the real from the unreal, and the finding of the real guru or true spiritual master. If your family depends upon you, perhaps your brother will assume its responsibility for you. Perhaps your wife will not hinder you in your spiritual life, but will rather help you. Or perhaps you will not marry at all and will not be attached to the world in any way. When such conditions become absolutely favorable, the realization of God becomes easy. Parable of the Father and His Dying Son. Once a man's son lay at the point of death and none could help him. Someone, however, said, "But there is one hope if you can get the venom of a cobra mixed with a few drops of rainwater fallen under the constellation of Swati in a human skull. By it your son's life will be saved." The father looked and found that the constellation of Swati would be in the ascendant on the morrow. So he prayed, saying, "O Lord, do thou make possible all these conditions and spare the life of my son." With extreme earnestness and longing in his heart, he set out on the following evening and searched diligently in a deserted spot for a human skull. At last he found one under a tree and watched, praying. Suddenly a shower came up and a few drops of rain lodged in the upturned skull. He said to himself, "Now I have the water in the skull under the right constellation." Then he prayed earnestly, "Grant, Lord, that the rest may also come." In a short time he discovered a toad not far from the skull, and he prayed again. Then from the grass sprang a cobra to snatch the toad. But at that moment the toad jumped over the skull, and the venom of the cobra fell into it. With overwhelming gratitude, the anxious father cried out, "Lord, by thy grace all impossible things are possible. Now I know that my son's life will be saved." Therefore, I say, if you have true faith and earnest longing, you will get everything by the grace of the Lord. Non-attachment is necessary. God cannot be obtained so long as the mind is not absolutely free from all worldly attachment. A true sage is one who cannot hoard anything for himself. There is a saying, "A fowl of the air and a true sage do not gather stores. They do not keep anything for the morrow." As regards myself, I cannot keep anything, even for my personal needs. I cannot put away any object, even a clove, for the future. At one time I thought of going to Benares, but afterwards I discovered that I had to carry clothes and take money with me, so it was impossible for me to go. Turning to Mahima. But you are householders. You can have both this and that, both the world and the spiritual life. Bhagavan. This cannot remain long. When I was practicing renunciation, one day I went to the Ganges, near the Panchavati, and took up a handful of earth and a handful of coins. Then I began to discriminate, saying that earth and gold are one and the same. Earth is gold and gold is earth. And after realizing the sameness, I threw both into the river. I prayed to my Divine Mother, saying, "O Mother, I do not desire material wealth or earthly prosperity, but only that thou dwell within my heart." When the mind renounces attachment to lust and wealth, it turns towards God and ultimately becomes attached to Him. Then that which was bound becomes free. To be turned away from God is bondage. The mind is like the needle of a scale, and God is the central point of balance. When the weight of worldly attachment is in the heart, the scale drops to one side and the needle of the mind is deflected from the central point or God. The heavier the weight, the greater is the deflection. Why does a child cry after its birth? It thinks, as it were, "I was enjoying divine communion, but now I have lost it. Where have I come and where is my God? Where is my God? For you, Mahima, the renunciation should be in the mind only. You should remain in the world, but unattached to it. Revered sir, can the world exist for the mind which is fixed on God? Of course it will exist, otherwise where will it go? I see that wherever I remain, I am in the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is everywhere. Verily, I say unto you, this world is the kingdom of God. Ramachandra, the divine incarnation and hero of the epic Ramayana, said to his father that he would renounce the world and go to a spiritual guru in order to attain spiritual wisdom. The father summoned the great sage Vashista to reason with his son. Vashista saw that Rama had intense dispassion for the world. He then said to him, O Rama, first discriminate with me, then renounce the world. By right discrimination, Rama realized that God manifests himself in the form of Jiva, or the individual soul in the world. Everything lives and exists in and through his being. Then Rama kept silent. Some time ago, Vaishnava Charan said that perfect knowledge of God is attained when one perceives him in all human beings. I have now come to a stage of realization in which I see that God is walking in every human form and manifesting himself alike to the sage and the sinner, the virtuous and the vicious. Therefore, when I meet different people, I say to myself, God in the form of the saint, God in the form of the sinner, God in the form of the unrighteous, and God in the form of the righteous. He who has attained to such realization goes beyond good and evil, above virtue and vice, and realizes that the divine will is working everywhere. Parable of the Monk and the Zamindar. There was a Hindu monastery in a certain village. The monks of the monastery went out every day with begging bowls to gather food. One day a monk passing by saw Zamindar severely beating a poor man. The holy man, being very kind-hearted, entreated the Zamindar to stop beating the man. The Zamindar, blind with rage, immediately turned on the monk and poured upon him the venom of his anger. He beat him until he was knocked unconscious on the ground. Another man, seeing his condition, went to the monastery and told what had happened. His brother monks ran to the spot where the holy man was lying. They lifted him and brought him to the monastery and laid him in a room. But the holy man still remained unconscious for a long time. Sorrowful and anxious, his brothers fanned him, bathed his face, put milk in his mouth, and tried to nurse him back to life. Gradually they brought him back to consciousness. The holy man opened his eyes and looked at his fellow brethren. One of them, desiring to know whether he could recognize his friends, asked him in a loud voice, Maharaj, dost thou recognize him who is feeding thee with milk? The holy man answered in a feeble voice, Brother, he who beat me is now feeding me. And Ramakrishna added, But one cannot realize this oneness of spirit unless one has reached God consciousness. Resignation. Live in the world like a dead leaf. As a dead leaf is carried by the wind into a house or on the roadside and has no choice of its own, so let the wind of the divine will blow you wherever it chooses. Now it has placed you in the world. Be contented. Again it will carry you to a better place. Be equally resigned. The Lord has kept you in the world. What can you do? Resign everything to Him, even your own dear self. Then all trouble will be over. You will see then that He is doing everything. Everywhere is the will of Rama, God. Parable of the Pious Weaver. In a certain village there lived a weaver. He was very spiritual. Everyone trusted and loved him. The weaver went to the market to sell his cloth. If a customer asked the price of it, he would say, By the will of Rama, the thread cost 1 rupee. By the will of Rama, the labor cost 4 annas. By the will of Rama, the profit is 2 annas. By the will of Rama, the price of the cloth as it stands is 1 rupee and 6 annas. People had such confidence in him that they would immediately pay the price and take the cloth. This man was a true devotee. At night after dinner he would sit for a long time and meditate on God and repeat his holy name. Once it was late into the night. He could not sleep. He was sitting alone in the courtyard near the entrance, smoking. A gang of robbers was passing that way. They wanted a carrier, and seeing this man, they dragged him away with them. Then they broke into a house and stole a great many things, some of which they piled on the poor weaver's head. At this moment the watchman came up. The robbers ran away, and the poor weaver with his load was caught. He had to spend that night in confinement. Next morning he was brought before the judge. The people of the village, hearing what had happened, came to see the weaver. They unanimously declared, "My lord, this man has stolen nothing." The judge then asked the weaver to describe what had occurred. The weaver said, "My lord, by the will of Rama, I was sitting in the courtyard. By the will of Rama, it was very late in the night. I, by the will of Rama, was meditating upon God and repeating his holy name, when, by the will of Rama, a band of robbers passed that way. By the will of Rama, they dragged me away with them. By the will of Rama, they broke into a house. By the will of Rama, they piled a load on my head, and when, by the will of Rama, the watchman came up, and by the will of Rama, I was caught. Then, by the will of Rama, I was kept in prison, and this morning the will of Rama has brought me before thee." The judge, seeing the innocence and spirituality of the man, ordered him to be released. Coming out, the weaver said to his friends, "The will of Rama has released me." Everything depends on God's will. Whether you live in the world or renounce it, everything depends on the will of Rama. Throwing your whole responsibility upon God, do your work in the world. If you cannot do this, what else can you do? If a clerk be imprisoned, when the term of his sentence is over and he comes out, tell me, will he pass his time in dancing for joy over his release or resume his work as clerk? So when the householder is liberated from the prison of the world, will he spend his life in rejoicing over his liberation? He may continue to perform his duties as householder if he so desires. He who has attained wisdom makes no distinction between this place and that place. To him all positions are equal. He who has found God here has also found him there. When the tail of a tadpole drops off, it can live both in water and on land. When the tail of ignorance drops off, man becomes free. He can then live both in God and in the world equally well. The world is like a dream. Those who follow monistic, Advaita, Vedanta, however, look upon this world as unreal, like a dream. According to them, Paramatman, or the Oversoul, is the witness of the 3 states of consciousness: waking, dream, and dreamless sleep. All these are ideas. The dream state just as real as the waking state. Let me tell you a story. Parable of the farmer and his only child. There was a farmer who was a monist. He had attained to some realization. He lived like any other farmer with his family, and he had a child. He and his wife had extreme love for this son because he was their only child. The farmer himself was a very spiritual man. He was respected and loved by everyone in the village. Once he was working in the field when suddenly a man brought the news of his son's severe illness. He went home, called physicians, took great care, but could not save the child's life. Everybody in the household was overwhelmed with grief, but the farmer looked as if nothing had happened. He consoled others by saying, "What can be gained by mourning over the child?" The next day he went to the field as usual, and after finishing his work he came home and found his wife and the other members of the family still weeping and wailing and plunged in deep sorrow. The wife reproached him, saying, "How heartless you are! You have not shed a single tear for your only child." The farmer then calmly replied, "Shall I tell you why I do not weep? Last night I had a wonderful dream. I saw that I was a king and the father of 8 beautiful children, and that I was enjoying all the pleasures and comforts of life. Suddenly I woke up and the dream passed away. Now I am in great confusion, whether I shall weep and wail for my 8 children or for this only one." The farmer was an Advaita jnani, therefore he realized that the waking state was as unreal as the dream state, and that the one permanent reality was Atman. But I accept all states as true. The state of Samadhi is the 4th state, and again the waking dream and dreamless sleep state. I accept Brahman, the Absolute, and Maya, Jiva, the individual soul, and the world. If I do not take all, a portion will be missing and the weight will be less. How could the weight be less? Brahman, the Absolute, is with the individual souls and the phenomenal world. First, when a person is discriminating by saying, "Not this, not this," he leaves the individual egos in the phenomenal world aside. Then after reaching the Absolute, when he returns, he realizes that the Absolute appears as the phenomenal world. In a wood apple, there are seeds, pulp, and the shell. When I take the pulp, I leave out the seeds and the shell. But when I speak of the weight of the wood apple, the weight of the pulp alone would not be equal to it. You will have to weigh the pulp, seeds, shell, and everything. That which has pulp has also seeds and shell. Similarly, that which is the Absolute has also all phenomena. Therefore, I take both the Absolute reality and the phenomenal reality. I do not blow away the phenomenal world by calling it a dream, because then the weight will be less. This is a wonderful harmony from the Absolute to the phenomenal and from the phenomenal to the Absolute. Those who are jnanis, monists, look at the world as a dream, but the realist bhaktas take every state as real. There are some cows who pick only certain tufts of grass and give very little milk. But there are other cows who eat all kinds of grass and give plenty of milk. The jnanis may be compared to the former, and the bhaktas to the latter. The highest of the bhaktas take both the Absolute and the phenomenal. Therefore, when they come down from the Absolute to the plane of relativity, they continue to enjoy the Absolute through the phenomenal. Meaning of Elm. You explain Elm as containing 3 letters, A-U-M. Revered Sir, Elm means creation, preservation, and destruction. But for me, it is like the sound, dong, of a big bell, which is at first audible, then inaudible, and ultimately melts away into infinite space. So the phenomenal melts away in the Absolute. The gross, subtle, and causal states lose themselves in the great cause, the Absolute. The waking dream and dreamless sleep states become merged in the 4th state, Samadhi. When the bell sounds, it creates waves like those in the ocean when a heavy stone is thrown into it. From the Absolute phenomena come out from the same Absolute, which is the great first cause, have also evolved the gross, subtle, and causal bodies. From the same Absolute again, which is the 4th state, come the other 3 states of consciousness. The waves of the ocean are once more dissolved in the ocean. By this illustration of dong, I show that the eternal word Elm is symbolic of the evolution and involution of phenomena from and into the Absolute. I have seen all these things. My Divine Mother has shown me that in the infinite ocean of the Absolute, waves rise and again merge into it. In that infinite spiritual space, millions of planets and worlds rise and are dissolved. I do not know what is written in your books. I have seen all this. Mahima, those who had realized did not write the books. They were intoxicated by their own realization. They forgot everything. How could they write? To write something is to have a calculating intellect. Others, having learned from them, have written, and their writings are known as scriptures. When the real is attained, worldly attachment vanishes. Worldly people say that it is impossible to be free from attachment to worldliness. But when God is attained, all worldly attachment vanishes. After realizing the absolute bliss of God consciousness, one cannot enjoy sense pleasures or run after fame, honor, or any worldly object. Moths, after once seeing the light, do not return to the darkness. As much as one thinks of God and meditates on Him, by so much will one lose one's taste for worldly pleasures. As much as one's love and devotion for God increases, by so much will diminish worldly desires and care for the body. Then one will look upon every woman as mother, upon his own wife as a spiritual helpmate. All animal passions will disappear. Divine spirituality will come, and non-attachment to the world. Then one will become absolutely emancipated even in this life. Vidya Sagara. Pandit Iswara Chandra Vidya Sagara was the greatest Hindu scholar of his time in Calcutta. He was a true philanthropist, a patriot, an educationalist, and the founder of the Metropolitan Institute in Calcutta. The word Vidyasagara is a Sanskrit title which he acquired on account of his vast erudition. It means ocean of knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna desired to meet Pandit Iswara Chandra Vidyasagara. One afternoon, he was seen coming in a carriage with some of his disciples, all the way from Dakshin Niswar, a distance of about 6 miles, to pay a visit to the Pandit at Durgaban in Calcutta. As the carriage passed before Raja Rammohun Roy's house, the Bhagavan suddenly grew silent. His mind was absorbed in meditation on the Divine Mother. One of his disciples, not perceiving the sudden change that had come over him, said, "This is Rammohun Roy's house." The Bhagavan replied, "Now my mind is not on such things." And immediately he entered into the ecstatic state bhava. Ramakrishna's childlike nature. The carriage, a short while after, drew up in front of the Pandit's house. Sri Ramakrishna alighted, supported by one of his disciples. Before reaching the staircase, which led to the Pandit's study, which was also the drawing-room, the Bhagavan, putting his hand on his shirt, asked a disciple with some concern, "Why is my shirt unbuttoned? Is it necessary to button it?" The disciple answered, "Do not trouble thyself, Lord, none will find fault with thee on that account." The Bhagavan, like a child, seemed to be satisfied and did not think about it again. The party was then led upstairs into a room where the Pandit was seated in a chair facing the south. A table, after the European fashion, with books and papers lying about on it, was before him, and he was talking with some of his friends. As the Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna entered the room, the Pandit rose to receive him. The Lord stood with his face to the west, and with one hand resting upon the table, he looked upon the Pandit intently as if he were an old acquaintance, and with a smile on his sweet, childlike, radiant face, lost all sense-consciousness and went into the ecstatic samadhi. After a while, taking his seat on a bench, the Bhagavan, in his semi-conscious state, uttered, "I wish some water to drink." Thereupon Vidyasagara inquired of a disciple whether the Bhagavan would also like some delicious sweetmeats which he had just received from Burdwan. Finding no objection, the Pandit went into his inner apartments and returned with water and sweetmeats. He placed them before the Lord. The disciples partook of the sweetmeats, but when they were offered to the one young man, Vidyasagara said, "Oh, he is a child of the house, do not trouble with him." The Bhagavan then said, referring to a young man who was sitting before him, "Yes, this young man is good. He is like the river Falgu, covered with dry sand, but if you dig a little you will find a strong invisible current underneath. He has a spiritual current inside, although he does not show it on the outside." Ramakrishna's love of humor. Then addressing the Vidyasagara, he continued, "Today I have at last reached the ocean," referring to the literal meaning of the word Vidyasagara, the ocean of knowledge. So long I have seen only canals, lakes, or at most rivers, but now I see the ocean itself. Then, sir, thou art welcome to take some salt water from it. No, my dear sir, why salt water? You are not the ocean of avidya, ignorance, which leads away from God, but you are the ocean of milk, the ocean of Vidya, or true knowledge leading Godward. Revered sir, thou mayest say that. Good works and compassion for all. Bhagavan continued, your karma proceeds from the sattva element of nature. From it rises compassion. Whatever work is done for the good of others is absolutely free from fault. It may be called rajasika, but it is the activity of sattva. There is no harm in such works. Sukadeva and others like him had compassion for all. They worked for humanity and helped mankind in the path of divinity. You are giving free education and doing charitable works. That is good. He who performs good works through love without seeking results attains to God. But he who works for name, fame, or any other selfish purpose remains bound. Further, I may say that you have already become siddha, perfected. Sir, how is that? You know that siddha, or well-boiled potato, becomes soft and tender. Have you not become tender-hearted by your compassion for all? But the paste of kalai, a kind of pulse, when boiled, siddha, becomes harder. Is it not so? Book-learned Pandits, like vultures. Bhagavan, laughing. Yes, but you are not like that. Mere book-learned Pandits, scholars, are hard-hearted. They do good neither to themselves nor to others. They are like vultures who soar high in the sky, but always search after carrion pits. They may talk about divine truths, but their minds are attached to women and wealth. Their attachment is to the worldly things, avidya, compassion, devotion, bhakti, dispassion, vairagya. These are the manifestations of Vidya. Vidya Sagara was listening to the words of wisdom with whole attention, while the eyes of other gentlemen present were fixed upon the blissful face of Ramakrishna radiant with divine glory. Vidya and Advidya. The Bhagavan continued, the absolute Brahman is beyond the reach of Vidya, knowledge, as well as of Advidya, ignorance, which keeps one away from the realization of the Absolute. The Absolute Brahman is beyond the reach of Maya, while Maya is either Vidya or Advidya. Vidya Maya and Avidya Maya both exist in this world. As there are knowledge, jnana, and devotion, bhakti, so also there are lust and greed for wealth. Good and evil, virtue and vice are to be found in this world of relativity. But Brahman is unaffected by them. They exist in relation to jiva, individual ego, but cannot touch the absolute Brahman. Brahman, untouched by good and evil. Brahman may be compared to the light of a lamp, as by the same light one may read the holy scriptures, and another may forge a document. While the light remains unaffected by the good and evil deeds, so is the absolute Brahman untouched by the good and evil of the world. He is like the sun who shines equally upon the virtuous and the wicked. If you ask, misery, sin, suffering, unhappiness, whose are these? I should answer, they are for the jiva. They do not affect the Brahman. Evil to jiva is not evil to Brahman, any more than the venom in the fangs of a snake is poison to the snake. Others may die of snake bite, but as the poison does not hurt the snake, so indeed is the existence of sin and evil in relation to jiva alone. Who can describe what the absolute Brahman is? Brahman is indescribable. Whatever can be uttered by the mouth has become defiled, as it were, like the leavings of food. The revealed scriptures, Vedas, Tantras, Puranas, and all holy books have become defiled, as it were, like leavings of food, for they have been uttered by human mouths. But there is one thing that is never defiled in this manner, and that is the absolute Brahman. No one has ever succeeded in describing the Absolute by words of mouth. Brahman is unspeakable, indescribable, unthinkable. Vidya Sagara, interrupting, said to his friends, "This is a grand idea. Today I have learned this truth, that the Brahman is the one substance that has never been defiled by the mouth." Bhagavan replied, "Yes, that is so." Parable of the Vedic Father and his two sons. A certain father had two sons. To instruct them in the knowledge of Brahman, he sent them to an acharya, preceptor. After a few years they returned home and saluted their father. The father was anxious to know how far they had learned about Brahman, so he asked his eldest son, "My dear son, have you studied all the scriptures and philosophies? Tell me, what is Brahman like?" The eldest son then tried to describe the absolute Brahman by quoting various passages from the Vedas. The father kept silent. Turning to his younger son, he asked the same question. The younger son did not answer in words, but remained motionless and communed with the Brahman in silence. The father then exclaimed, "My dear child, thou hast approached the realization of the Brahman. Thy silence is a better answer than the recitation of 100 texts of the Vedas, for Brahman is indescribable by words. It is indeed the absolute silence. The knowledge of the absolute Brahman is attained in the state of Samadhi. In that superconscious state, Brahman is realized. Then all thoughts cease to rise and perfect silence prevails in the soul. Even the power of speech remains unmanifested. How can one describe Brahman by words of mouth? Man thinks that he has known the absolute Brahman." Parable of the Ant and the Sugar. An ant went to a mount of sugar. The ant did not realize how high was the mountain, but ate a small particle of sugar and was satisfied. It carried home another mount of particle in its mouth. On its way it thought, "Next time I will carry the whole mountain." Such, alas, is the thought of small minds. They think that they have known the Absolute, not realizing that Brahman is beyond the reach of mind and thought. However great the mind may be, it cannot fully comprehend the absolute Brahman. Sukadeva and other great spiritual teachers may be compared to large ants. They could carry in their mouth at utmost 8 or 10 grains from the mountain of sugar. It is absurd to say that Brahman has been fully comprehended by a great man, as it is absurd to say that the whole mountain of sugar was carried away by a large ant. What the Vedas and other scriptures have said about the Absolute is like the description of the ocean given by a man who saw the vast ocean. When asked what the ocean was like, he exclaimed in utter amazement, "Oh, what I have seen! How vast is the expanse! How big are the waves! What a thundering roar!" Like unto this is the talk about the absolute Brahman. The Vedas declare that Brahman is the ocean of absolute existence, intelligence, and bliss. Sukadeva and other great spiritual teachers stood on the shore of that infinite ocean, saw it, and touched its waters. Some believe that even those great souls did not go into the ocean, for whoever enters into that ocean of Brahma does not return to this mundane existence. Parable of a Salt Dhow. A dhow made of salt once went to the ocean to measure its depth. It had a desire to tell others how deep was the ocean. Alas, its desire was never satisfied. No sooner had it plunged into the ocean than it melted away and became one with the ocean. Who would bring the news regarding the depth? Similar is the condition of the jiva, individual soul, who enters into the infinite ocean of the absolute Brahman. Brahman is silence. Bhagavan, is it true that the man who has entered in Samadhi or who has acquired Brahmajanam does not speak? Yes, he who has realized Brahman becomes silent. Discussions and argumentations exist so long as the realization of the Absolute does not come. If you melt butter in a pan over fire, how long does it make noise? So long as there is water in it. When the water is evaporated, it ceases to make further noise. Again, if you throw a piece of dough in that hot, clarified butter, ghee, there will be noise until the cake is thoroughly fried. The soul of a seeker after Brahman may be compared to fresh butter. It is mixed with the water of egoism and worldliness. Discussions and argumentations, vichara, of a seeker are like the noise caused during the process of purification by the fire of knowledge. As the water of egoism and worldliness is evaporated, the soul becomes pure. All noise of debates and discussions ceases, and absolute silence reigns in the state of Samadhi. Egoism of a saint. Thus, realizing the absolute Brahman in silence, the soul comes down on the plane of relativity to help others, and to teach mankind the highest wisdom of Brahman. Then he talks again, and makes a noise again, as the hot ghee does when in contact with a piece of dough. Such a soul retains the sense of I simply to help mankind. Sankaracharya and other spiritual teachers kept the purified sense of I, without which all teaching is impossible. Sages teach for the good of others. The bee buzzes so long as it is outside the lotus and does not settle down in its heart to drink of the honey. As soon as it tastes of the honey, all buzzing is at an end. Similarly, all noise of discussion ceases when the soul of the neophyte begins to drink the nectar of divine love in the lotus feet of the Almighty. Sometimes, however, the bee, after being intoxicated by the honey, makes a sweet humming sound. So the God-intoxicated soul sometimes speaks for the good of others. A pitcher makes a noise when it is being filled with water in a tank, but all noise stops as soon as the pitcher is full to the brim. The noise will be heard again if some water of the pitcher be poured into another pitcher. Here, water means the water of the divine wisdom, and the soul of a wise man is the pitcher. Relation between guru and disciples. The question flow arises: how do we explain the relation between a perfect guru and his disciples? The guru must talk in order to drive away the ignorance of his disciples. This kind of discrimination, however, does no harm. The boiling butter, after it is clarified, ceases to make any noise. But if the raw cake made of flour is thrown into it, it will produce much noise because of the water in the cake. The noise will continue until the cake is properly fried. The unfried cake may be compared to the disciple, and the boiling butter to the guru, the spiritual teacher. The sound of teaching is heard so long as the disciple is not perfectly enlightened. Non-attachment. Sri Ramakrishna continued, so long as the individual soul has the slightest attachment to the world of senses and desires, it cannot attain to Brahmajnana. He is a jnani who relinquishes all worldly desires and sense pleasures by saying, not this, and then realizes the Supreme Brahman in Samadhi. A jnani knows that all phenomena of the universe which are subject to evolution, whether physical or mental, are within the realm of Maya. They are unreal and transitory like the objects of vision in a dream. Therefore, as one climbs the stairway step by step until the roof is reached, so he rises above them step by step, saying, not this, until he reaches the absolute Brahman, which is the roof of the phenomenal universe. A jnani goes so far as to realize the Brahman is the absolute reality and all phenomena unreal. All phenomena unreal. A vijnani, however, goes farther and realizes more. He sees that the roof and the steps are made of the same substance. Few can stay long on the roof, the realm of the Absolute. All those who reach this state of Samadhi must return to the lower planes, just as no one can sing on C, the highest note of the gamut, for a long time. The sense of I drags one down. But when a vijnani returns from Samadhi to a lower plane of consciousness and perceives the world of relativity, he sees the Brahman everywhere, and that the same absolute being appears as Jiva in all the phenomena of the universe. He realizes, I am Brahman. I am he. Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. There are various paths which lead to the realization of the absolute Brahman. The path of a jnani is as good as that of a bhakta. Jnana Yoga is true, so is Bhakti Yoga. There is another path of bhakti mixed with jnana which is equally true. So long as the sense of I, me, mine, remains in the devotee, the path of bhakti is easier for him. A Vijnani, however, realizes the absolute Brahman as the unchangeable reality of the universe, firm and immutable, like the Mount Sumeru. It is beyond all activity of Maya. He also sees that the world has evolved out of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, of the prakriti or cosmic energy. Maya. Maya or prakriti consists of Vidya and avidya. Vidya is that energy which leads Godward. It manifests itself as discrimination, viveka, non-attachment, vairagya, devotion and love of God, bhakti prema. But avidya leads to worldliness. This energy expresses itself as various passions, desire for wealth and honor, ambition, work with attachment, selfishness. All these Vidya and Avidya forces rise from the divine energy of Brahman. They cannot affect the Brahman. Vijnani and Bhakta. The Vijnani realizes that the same absolute Brahman appears as the personal God, Ishvara, that he who is beyond all attributes is also the personal God with all attributes and blessed qualities. The Vijnani sees that Jiva, individual ego, phenomenal world, mind, intellect, bhakti, dispassion, knowledge, all these are the glory of the Supreme Personal Deity. If these manifestations of the divine glory did not exist, who would have worshipped him as the Lord of the universe? If a rich man does not possess wealth and property, but becomes bankrupt, nobody will call him rich. Do you not see how beautiful this world is? How many varieties of phenomena? The sun, moon, stars, various kinds of animals and vegetables, and things large and small, good and bad. Some men with great powers, others with few. Vidya Sagara replied, Is it then true, revered sir, that God has given to some greater power than others? Is the Lord partial? Unity and diversity. The Lord dwells as the all-pervading being, Vibhu, equally within all living creatures, great or small, nay, even in the smallest ant or animalcule. The difference lies in the manifestation of powers, Sakti. Otherwise, how would it be possible for one strong man to defeat 10 men in a hand-to-hand fight, while a weakling will run away from the presence of an ordinary mortal? If there were no difference in powers, why should people respect and honor you? You have no monstrosity, like 2 horns on the forehead that people will come to see you out of curiosity. You have more compassion, more wisdom than others. Therefore, people come to see you and pay respects to you. Do you not think so? There is nothing in mere book learning. One should study books simply to find out the ways by which he, the absolute Brahman, can be realized. A holy man had a manuscript with him. Someone asked what it contained. The saint opened it and showed that on every page was written the sacred formula, Aum Rama, the holy name of the Lord. True meaning of Gita. Take the sacred book of Bhagavad Gita. What does it teach? If you wish to know it, repeat the name Gita 10 times in quick succession. Gita, 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 etc. It will sound like Tagi, 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 which has the same meaning as the Sanskrit word Tyagi, that is, one who has renounced everything of the world for the sake of the Lord. One truth which the Bhagavad Gita teaches is this: O Jiva, giving up attachment to objects and pleasures of the world, struggle to realize God. The man of attachment, whether a saint or a householder, must be free from all attachment to the world. Then and then alone will the heart be purified and the Absolute will be realized. Chaitanya Deva, God incarnate of Nudaya, when traveling on a pilgrimage in the Deccan, southern India, saw in one place a man reading aloud the text of the Gita. At a little distance, another man, with unrestrainable tears running down his cheeks, was listening. Chaitanya Deva asked him whether he understood the meaning of the text. The poor man replied, "My lord, I do not understand one word of what the Pandit is reading." Chaitanya Deva questioned him, "Why are you weeping then?" The devotee answered, "I see the chariot of Arjuna, and the blessed Lord Krishna is speaking before him. This divine vision brings tears of love to my eyes." You may ask, why does a Vijnani prefer to have bhakti, love and devotion? The answer is because it is difficult for one to be free from the sense of I. In the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, it may vanish for the time being, but it comes back again. While for ordinary individuals, it is almost impossible to eliminate the sense of I, me, and mine. Sense of I. However many times you may cut off the branches of the aswatha tree, so long as the root is alive, new branches will sprout. Similarly, you may try to get rid of the sense of I, but so long as the root is alive, it will sprout up again and again. Even after acquiring Brahmajnana, the emancipated soul is forced back to the plane of this aham, sense of I. If you dream of a tiger, you will tremble in every limb and your heart will throb violently. When you wake up, you may realize that it was a mere dream, but still your heart will go on palpitating all the same. Similarly, the sense of I remains even after the realization of the Absolute. Thus, if the sense of I is the cause of all troubles, and it is impossible to be free from it, let it stay on as I, the servant of the Lord. Ramachandra, the God incarnate, once asked his great devotee, Hanuman, "My son, in what relation do you regard me?" The devotee replied, "When I think of myself as embodied, I am thy servant, and thou art the Lord. When I think of myself as the jiva, ego, I am thy part, and thou art the universal whole. But when I think of myself as the Atman, I am one with thee. Then I realize I am thou, and thou art I." If the sense of I clings to one so persistently, let it remain like that of a true bhakta who thinks of himself as the servant of the Lord. Ajanam and Janam, I and mine. These two are the signs of Ajanam, ignorance. My house, my wealth, my learning, my glory, all these are mine. The idea proceeds from ignorance of one's true self. But Jnanam, or divine knowledge, means that state where Jiva realizes, O Lord, thou art the master of all, house, family, children, friends, relatives, nay, whatever exists in the universe belongs to thee. Whatever is mine is thine. Nothing belongs to me. Such ideas rise from true knowledge. It is good for everyone to remember that after death nothing of this world will remain with us. We have come here simply to perform certain karma and gain some experience. Just as country people come to a big city like Calcutta to do some work, so we have come to fulfill our desires according to the tendencies with which we were born. Parable of the Rich Man and his Sirkar. A rich man has given the charge of his beautiful garden to his Sirkar, steward. When visitors come to see the garden, the Sirkar waits on them attentively. He shows them the beautiful parts of the garden with luxurious fruit trees, flower beds, palace-like buildings, lakes, etc., saying, "These are, gentlemen, our mango trees. This is our orchard. This is our lake. How beautiful are our flowers. Here you see is our drawing room with most expensive furniture, fine paintings by the best artist. All these belong to us." The same sirkar may be found fault with and dismissed by his master at any time with peremptory order to leave the garden at once. He will not be allowed sufficient time to pack up his trunk and take his own baggage with him. Such is the miserable plight of those who lay claim upon things which do not in reality belong to them. Everything belongs to the Lord. It is ridiculous for man to say, "I am karta," the doer. All these things are mine. The Lord smiles on 2 occasions. On 2 occasions the Lord cannot help smiling. A person is taken seriously ill and is about to die. The physician says to the mother of the patient, "Mother, there is no cause for fear. I shall save your son's life." The physician forgets that the will of the Lord is at the root of every event of life and death. The Lord then smiles, thinking, "How foolish this man must be who boasts of saving the life of his patient when the latter is dying under my will." The Lord smiles again when 2 brothers are engaged in partitioning their estate. They take a measuring tape and, putting it out across the land, say, "This portion is mine and that is yours." The Lord smiles, thinking, "The whole universe belongs to me, but these foolish brothers say, 'This portion is mine and that is yours.' O Lord, thou makest everything, and thou art my nearest and dearest one. This house, this family, these relatives, these friends of mine, nay, this whole universe belongs to thee, O Lord." Such is the nature of true jnana, knowledge. But I do everything, I am the doer. My house, my family, my children, my friends, everything belongs to me. All this proceeds from ajnana, ignorance. The Lord alone is thine own. A guru was giving this instruction to his disciple. The Lord alone is thine own, and no one else belongs to thee. The disciple replied, "But my mother and my wife, who take such good care of me, who love me and feel extremely unhappy when they do not see me, are also my own, are they not?" The guru answered, "In this you are mistaken. I will show you that none of them truly cares for you. Never believe for a moment that your mother or wife will sacrifice her life for your sake. You can try and see. Go home and feign excruciating pain, and I will come and show you." The disciple acted accordingly. Doctors were called in, but no one could afford relief. The mother of the patient was sorrowing and sighing. The wife and children were weeping. At this moment, the sannyasin guru appeared. "The disease is of a serious nature," he said, "and I do not see any chance of the patient's recovering unless someone come forward to give his or her life for the patient." At this, all of them looked aghast. The sannyasin, addressing the old mother of the sick man, said, "To live or die will be the same thing to you if in your old age you lose your son who earns for himself and for you all. If you can give your life in exchange for his, I can save your son. If you as mother cannot make this sacrifice for him, who else in the world will care to do it?" The old woman stammered through her tears, "Revered father, I am ready to do anything you order for the sake of my son. But the thing is my own life, and what is my life in comparison to that of my son? The thought, what will become of my little ones after my death, makes me a coward. Unfortunate that I am, these little ones are in my way." While listening to this dialogue between the sannyasin and his mother-in-law, the wife wept bitterly and addressing her parents said, "For your sake, dear father and mother, I cannot make the sacrifice." In this way everyone found an excuse. Then the sannyasin turned to the patient and said, "Do you see? No one here is ready to sacrifice his life for you. Do you understand now what I meant by saying that there was no depending on anybody?" When the disciple saw all this, he abandoned his so-called home and followed the sannyasin as guru. Self-surrender and prayer. The absolute Brahman cannot be known by reasoning. Be his servant, and taking refuge with him, pray to him with earnestness and sincerity. He will surely reveal himself unto you. Book learning or intellectual discussions cannot reveal the divinity. Thus saying, the Blessed One sang, "The glory of the Divine Mother. Who knoweth what is Kali, my Divine Mother? Even the 6 schools of philosophy get not a glimpse of her. The yogi ever meditateth upon her at the Muladhara and the Sahasrara. As the swans, male and female, commune with each other, so in this lotus forest, lotus is here a symbol of plexus, doth Kali commune with her consort, Shiva. Kali, the soul of Atmarama, Shiva, is as beloved as Sita is of Rama. The majesty of Kali, Shiva, Kala, alone can know. Forsooth, who else may know it? For she giveth birth unto the universe. Think how vast she is. She dwelleth within all things as the will omnipotent. The psalmist, Prasad, singeth, Mortals may laugh at the thought of swimming across the mighty ocean, and this my mind perceiveth, but my heart enfoldeth it not, yet it will aspireth to the touch of the moon. The Blessed One, referring to this song, said, See how Ramaprasad describes that books and reasoning cannot reveal the Divine Mother. Faith is necessary. The omnipotence of faith. Reason is weak. Faith is omnipotent. Reason cannot go far enough and must stop short of the goal. Faith will work wonders. The parable of a Brahmin priest and his boy. There was a certain Brahmin priest who served in a household chapel. Once he went away, leaving the charge of the service to his son. He told the boy to place the daily offering of food before the deity and see that he eat it. The boy, following the instructions of his father, placed the offering before the image and silently waited. But the image neither spoke nor ate. The boy watched for a long time. He had firm faith that the deity would come down from the altar, take the seat before the offering, and eat it. Then he prayed, O Lord, come and eat. It is getting very late. I cannot wait any longer. But the Lord did not speak. Then the boy began to cry, saying, Lord, my father told me to see that thou didst eat the offering. Why dost thou not come? Thou comest to my father and eatest his offering. What have I done that thou dost not come to me and eat my offering? He cried bitterly and for a long time. Then, as he looked up at the seat, he saw the deity in a human form eating the offering. When the service was ended and the boy came out, the members of the household said to him, If the service is over, bring out the offering. The boy replied, Yes, but the Lord has eaten everything. In amazement, they asked, What did you say? With absolute innocence, the boy repeated, Why, the Lord has eaten all that I offered. Then they entered the chapel and were dumbfounded by the sight of the empty dishes. Such is the power of true faith and true yearning. Yes, faith will enable a man to cross the mighty ocean itself without the least difficulty. In the epic Ramayana, it is said, Ramachandra, God incarnate, worked hard to throw a bridge over the part of the sea separating Lanka, Ceylon, from the mainland of India. But as if to prove the majesty, the omnipotence of faith, he gave it to his bhakta, the great Hanuman, to jump across the ocean by the unaided power of faith. It is also told that once a bhakta, a friend of Bibhisana, wanted to go across the sea. Bibhisana, to whom he appealed for help, had the name of Rama, God, written on a leaf without the knowledge of his friend. He then said to the bhakta, Take this and be careful that you have it tied to the end of your cloth. It will enable you to walk across the ocean in safety. But mine, never look inside, for you will go under the water if you open it." The Bhakta put faith in his friend's words and walked on the ocean in safety for some time. But unfortunately his curiosity became his enemy. He wanted to see what precious thing Vibhasana had given him that had the power of taking him unhurt over the mighty deep. When he opened it, he discovered a leaf with the name of Rama written on it. He thought what a trifling thing it was. No sooner did that thought arise in his mind than he was drowned. Those who belong to this class of jivas cannot easily have faith in God, but those who are born with divine qualities possess the highest faith naturally. When Prahlada tried to write the first letter of the Sanskrit alphabet, K, it brought up before his mind the name Krishna, and he began to cry. The natural tendency of a jiva is to doubt and to become skeptical. Hazara will not believe in the truth that Brahman and Divine Mother, the Absolute, and his energy are one and the same. Yet faith is omnipotent. Before it, all the powers of nature shrink and give way. It carries one over seas and mountains with perfect ease. Sin, iniquity, worldliness, and ignorance all vanish before true faith. The Bhagavan sang, "The name of the Lord, O my Divine Mother, if I die with thy hallowed name, Durga Durga, on my lips, then in the end, O giver of all bliss, shall it be seen whether thou savest thy poor child drowning in the ocean of sin. I might have slain a cow or a Brahmin or an unborn child. I might be a drunkard, nay more, the slayer of a woman. But of all these dire sins I have not the slightest fear. Through faith in thy holy name I can reach the highest bliss of Brahman." Yes, faith is at the root of all spiritual progress. Thou canst do without all other things, only thou must have faith. Have but faith in the Lord, and thou shalt become at once free from the vilest, the blackest of all sins. The one thing needed is faith and bhakti, love, devotion, prayerfulness, self-surrender. It is exceedingly difficult, especially in this age, for a man with his limited faculties to come to my mother through vichara. Discrimination of the real Brahman from the unreal, phenomenal universe. Unaided by the divine person, verily has Prasad, the sweet psalmist of Bengal, laid stress on this difficulty in his well-known song. The Divine Mother and the Absolute Brahman. Like a madman, O mind, what seekest thou in the dark room? His divine being cometh in deep meditation. Without that, who can approach him? The moon of desire still shineth in thy secret chamber. First bring it under control with all thy might. It will hide itself at the dawn of divine wisdom. Holding this ideal, the great yogi practiseth meditation for ages. When realization cometh, it attracts the soul as a magnet attracts unto itself a piece of iron. Thou shalt not find it in the 6 schools of philosophy, in the Vedas, Tantras, or in the Holy Scriptures. It loveth the sweetness of true devotion, bhakti, and abideth in the body with everlasting bliss. Prasad says, O mind, shall I disclose in public, Chatur, the true nature of that which I worship as my Divine Mother. Guess and understand it from these hints. There was a deep silence at the close of this song, which had been listened to with rapt attention. Everyone was moved. Ramakrishna's Samadhi. At the end of this song, the Bhagavan was once more found to be in that indescribable state of Samadhi. His sweet divine voice became still. His eyes remained fixed and steadfast, but his spiritual eye was feasting on the beatific vision of the divine glory. There was left just enough of self-consciousness to bring the soul face to face with the Divine Mother. This blessed vision the Bhagavan enjoyed for a long time. His face was radiant with celestial light and expressed by sweet smiles the unbounded happiness which he was enjoying within himself, and in his semi-conscious state, he uttered these words. What is bhakti? Bhakti, or devotion, means wholehearted love for the Lord. The absolute Brahman is called Divine Mother by the psalmist. Prasad asked his mind to understand it by hints. He who is described in the Vedas as the absolute Brahman is my Divine Mother. I am praying to her. Brahman, impersonal and personal. That which is the absolute nirguna, impersonal beyond all attributes, is also the same as the personal God who is with all attributes and blessed qualities. The absolute Brahman again is inseparable from the divine energy Sakti. The term Brahman refers to that aspect of divinity which is impersonal and which is beyond all activity. But when we think of him as creating, preserving, and destroying all phenomena, then we call him the personal God, Divine Mother or Kali. Brahman and Sakti are one. In reality, there is no distinction between Brahman, or the impersonal Absolute, and Sakti, the Divine Mother. The Brahman and the Sakti are one just as fire and its burning power are one. As by the word fire we understand its power of burning, so by the latter we know that it is the same as fire. By realizing the one, both are realized. They are one just as much as milk and its whiteness are one. We cannot conceive milk without the whiteness. They are one just as a gem and its brightness are one. We cannot conceive a gem without the brightness. They are one just as the serpent and its sinuous motion are one. We cannot conceive of the serpent without the serpentine movements. He who knows what light is has the knowledge of darkness also. He who has the conception of the phenomenal world must have also some conception of the absolute noumenon. He who knows the Sakti, or the personal aspect of the absolute being, knows also the impersonal Brahman. Again, he who has realized the absolute noumenon has also realized the phenomenon. He who has realized Brahman has also realized the personal God or Divine Mother, Sakti. The power of the Divine Mother. This Divine Mother bestows the highest of knowledge of Brahman, Brahmanjana, by bringing her devotee into the state of Samadhi. She it is who brings him down on the plane of sense consciousness and allows him to retain the sense of I and me. By the power of my Divine Mother, all mortals, jiva, possess the sense of I and mine. She again reveals to the soul of one who is in Samadhi that all living beings, nay, the whole universe, is but the manifestation of the divine energy. It is she who makes one reach the Brahmajana, the highest knowledge of the Absolute, and she again makes another, her beloved devotee, who surrenders himself to her omnipotent will. This truth is the greatest secret of all secrets. Therefore the psalmist says, shall I disclose it in the Chatur? Vidya Sagara asked his friend who was sitting nearby, do you understand the meaning of Chatur? The friend replied, I know that Chatara means a courtyard within a house. Vidya Sagara replied, exactly. It may also mean a public marketplace, so Ramaprasad does not want to make this secret known to the public. Bhagavan, with his smiling face, spoke to Vidya Sagara. Oh, you are a Pandit, the great scholar. You must know all this. When I sing the praise of my Divine Mother, I refer to the same absolute Brahman. The term mother is very sweet. Therefore, I like to call him Mother. We must learn to love the personal God, Iswara. Through love, he can be easily attained. Love, devotion, and faith are the most valuable. Listen to another song. The Bhagavan sang again. Love for the Divine Mother. Ecstasy dawneth when I meditate on my Divine Mother. As is the ardor of thought so is the attainment. But the root must be perfect faith. If the mind diveth into the sea of bliss at the feet of my mother, then is there no further need of worship, rituals, sacrifice, or repetition of the Lord's name. The devotee of the Divine Mother is free even in this life, and doth enjoy everlasting bliss. The Lord, the ocean of immortality. He who can dive into the sea of bliss becomes immortal. The Lord is described in the Vedas as the ocean of immortal bliss. Whoever enters into it becomes free from death. Some people have a wrong idea that too much meditation upon the Absolute will unbalance the mind. No one becomes unbalanced by meditating upon the Absolute. Devotional exercises, rituals, ceremonial sacrifices, or the pouring of oblations into the sacred fire, such works are needless when true love for the Lord comes in the heart of the devotee. A fan is needed so long as there is no breeze. When the breeze of the divine love blows, all ritualistic works become unnecessary. Selfless works purify the heart. Referring to Vidya Sagara, the Bhagavan continued, "The works which you are doing are good works, if you can perform them without seeking their result and without thinking that you are the doer, then it will be still better. The highest results of works done in this selfless manner is the attainment of true love for God. Such works purify the heart and bring God consciousness in the end. But as your love for the Lord becomes more and more intense, your religious works will become less and less. A married woman diligently performs the household duties, but she is not allowed to do heavy work when she is about to give birth to her child. You are doing charitable works and other works for the good of humanity. Doing good to the world. In reality, however, they are of great help to yourself. They will purify your heart and bring on selfish love for God. Man has no power to do good to the world. The Lord doth everything. He who hath made the sun and the moon, he who hath given affection in the hearts of parents, he who hath bestowed compassion upon the great souls, he who hath brought unselfish love and devotion in the hearts of saints and sages, doth everything for the good of his world. He who else hath the power to perform any good act? Whosoever performeth good works without holding any desire for their fruits will do good for himself. There is gold inside under the cover of earth. You have not discovered it yet. If you once realize this secret treasure, your worldly duties will vanish and you will not care for other works. Just as a mother loves nothing better than to fondle and kiss her newborn baby. Go onward and do not stop in one place. Remember the parable of the woodcutter and stop not until the goal is reached. The goal is a realization of God. By His grace, His true devotee can see Him and can talk with Him just as I am talking with you. Absolute silence prevailed when the Blessed Lord spoke these words with fire and eloquence. Everyone's heart was moved by that divine love which was flowing with mighty force within the soul of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. With a smiling face, the Bhagavan said, "You know all that I have told, but you do not realize how much you possess in the same manner as Varuna. The Lord of the ocean does not care to know how many beautiful and valuable jewels there are in his boundless treasure of the deep." Vidyasagara replied, "Revered sir, thou canst say so." "Yes, do you not know that very often a millionaire Babu does not know the names of his own attendants? He does not remember in what places his valuable things are kept." Everyone was listening to this interesting conversation when Bhagavan suddenly asked Vidyasagara, "Will you not come to the temple garden? It is a beautiful place." "Oh yes, certainly. Thou hast been so kind as to come to me. Shall I not return my visit to thee?" "A visit to me? Oh, for shame, for shame." My dear sir, this from thee? I wish to know why dost thou say so? Humility of Ramakrishna. Well, we are like fishing boats, small and light enough to row about on ponds, narrow canals, or even on large rivers. But you are like a big steamer. Who can tell? You might founder on the sandbank if you ventured too far up the stream. But now, at this season, steamers may go up without much danger. Oh, I see, this is the rainy season. At about 8 in the evening, it was announced that the carriage was ready to take Sri Ramakrishna back to Thakurbadi at Dakshineswara. The Bhagavan became absent-minded for a while. Perhaps his mind was fixed upon the Divine Mother, or perhaps he was asking her blessing upon his kind host. The Bhagavan then rose to bid him farewell, and Vidya Sagara, with a lighted candle in his hand, led the way downstairs and through the compound of his house to the gate. Outside the gate, a carriage was waiting to receive the honored guest and his devoted companions from the Thakurbadi. An unexpected sight greeted the eyes of the party as they came out. It was a man who might have been a little under 40 standing before the gate with folded hands. He was dressed in white and wore a white turban on his head. He had a fair complexion and expressive eyes, and a smile was on his face. No sooner did he see the Bhagavan than he fell at his feet with his head touching the ground. The Bhagavan said, "Is it you, Balaram? How is it that I find you here?" "O revered sir, I have been waiting for some time here at the gate to see thee." "Why did you not come in?" "I came late, so I would not interrupt thee, but thought it better to stay here." The Bhagavan then stepped into the carriage with his companions. Vidya Sagara asked the disciple, "Shall I see the carriage hire paid?" The disciple replied, "No, sir, you need not trouble yourself. It has already been paid by a friend." Ramakrishna leaves Vidyasagara. The Pandit then folded his hands and bent his head and body to make his pranama, salutation, to the Bhagavan. All assembled about the carriage did the same. The little group at the gate, with the venerable Vidyasagara at their head, still holding the lighted candle in his hand, stood for a while looking in the direction of the carriage, wondering who this God-intoxicated man might be. So wise, yet so childlike, so full of joy, so sweet, so godly. Verily, a light came down to set ablaze the dry bones of a workaday world. Embodied love like the dew of heaven falling on the dry, thirsty heart of man. A voice crying unto sunken, self-weary man, "Thou must be born again in love." A healer from another clime of this strange disease of modern life. A man among men eager to solve for them the enigma of the universe.